Hello and welcome to Experiencing Love. I'm your host, Philip Jocks, and I am so glad that you're here. I have another drawing video for you today. I don't know, I was just in that mood last night and decided I'm gonna pick up this camera, pick up this drawing pad, and just go off. Do what I just feel called to do. That's how a lot of my drawings have been recently. And there's something really therapeutic about it, something so calming to not exactly have a plan that I need to follow, but to just go with the flow, let it happen. No, don't get me wrong, there's a general plan of get ink on paper, of course. But sometimes it can be really useful to be open to new ideas coming your way. So I hope you enjoy. Make sure to leave a like before heading out. And without further ado, let's begin. I decided to actually record this audio the day after. So if you're listening to this on the day of release, this morning, I did so because I finally had to prioritize some sleep last night. I had to get some sleep. I've been neglecting it way too long, and I knew I had the ability to record in the morning, even though the upload was going to be a little bit late. This got me thinking, I want to actually start uploading a little bit later in the mornings, or maybe even afternoons. I don't know what effect that'll have on my channel, but I do know what effect it'll have on the content themselves. These past few episodes have all been recorded late at night, and I could feel the energy drop. Like, I know I'm not at 100%. And you know, if you've been here before, that I'm all about making sure you're at your best, doing what you have to do to be at your best. I'm not saying you have to be at your best of the best every single time. When I say be at 100%, I mean do your best with the resources you have. Sometimes we are in situations where we're just not able to sleep that much. Maybe you have a late shift one day at work and then you wake up early for the next shift. But what's important is to get what sleep you can, because that's a resource that you have, and then doing your best with whatever you get. This life, it's not about being perfect. It's not about getting it right 100% of the time. What's most important is being able to do your best with whatever comes your way. Be resourceful. Find ways, different ways, creative ways to find solutions to your problems, your challenges, your trials. I like to believe that we're always being tested, but it's not a test that if you fail, you fail. It's the type of test where if you fail, it's more of a signal to you of something you have to work on, something you have to adjust or you have to learn. The test shows us, okay, are we able to move on? Are we able to learn the next lesson? Or is there something that we still have to repeat? As much as I'm into learning and growing, and I do it every single day in various ways, I often have to repeat lessons. I don't think it matters how much you focus on this learning and personal development and growing track. At some point, you will reach a level where you need to take a step back, you need to reevaluate, and you need to see, all right, am I still going in the right direction? You might not be. I heard this analogy once that said when planes fly, they are flying in the wrong direction about 98% of the time. But every few seconds, maybe even microseconds, the pilots in the plane, or maybe the autopilot in the plane, is making these tiny adjustments. A little bit to the left, a little bit to the right, a little bit slower, a little bit faster, a little bit pitched up, a little bit pitched down. And all those micro adjustments, all those mini movements that we as passengers in a plane would barely ever feel, make sure we generally stay on course, stay going in the right direction, and eventually we'll get there. But if at the very beginning of the flight we take off and we choose a direction and we say we're going in that direction, we don't second guess it, we don't reevaluate, and we just go, we could end up hundreds of miles off course very easily. If you're going in 1 degree in the wrong direction, you're going 1 degree to the left. Yeah, maybe 10 miles away, it's not going to be that big of a difference. But what if your flight is across an ocean? What if you're flying 1,000 to 2,000 miles away? Well, that 1 degree is going to make a massive difference. The same thing happens in our lives. It's not about just choosing a direction and not recalibrating and just going forward. It's about having the ability to learn as we go, to take stock of where we are, look at our gauges and see, all right, are we going to make it to our destination, or do we have to pivot just a little? One of the greatest lessons I've learned is how important it is to pivot, how important it is to slightly change course, to change direction. I'm still going generally in the direction I want to go in, but I also acknowledge that sometimes I may overcorrect. Sometimes I may not correct enough. And so I have to to keep looking at my gauges, the gauges of my life, to see how am I doing? The gauges of our lives can look like, all right, how do I feel about my relationships? Do I have a lot of friends that I really love and care about and want to spend time with? Do I have a boyfriend or a girlfriend that loves me to the moon and back, and same for them? Do I have a good relationship with my family, or what I like to call my chosen family? People that I choose to call my closest of the closest people. Another gauge could be your finances. How are you doing? Are you able to save money? Or do you notice that there's maybe a hole in your bank account where money just keeps slipping through? Do you have a job, or are you looking for a job, a new job? Maybe one of the gauges is your fitness. How do you feel about your body? How do you feel about your diet? How do you feel about exercising? How often do you do it? When do you do it? Who do you do it with? This is all stuff that you can take a look at and say, all right, am I happy with what I'm seeing? It's not to say there's one right way to get to your destination, but to a degree, the gauges do have to be working together for you to get there. It's important, really, really important, to have these moments, to have these days where you just check in with yourself. You have no idea how many people don't. I think if you simply just started checking in on yourself, you would skyrocket to the top 10, 20% of people in the world. Just because you're willing to ask yourself questions that nobody else is asking. Last night, I ended up watching this video, and maybe it was a joke of a question, like someone asked it jokingly, but someone ended up asking, what's one thing that men experience but never share? And it was something along the lines of responses like, men hardly get compliments, or men rarely get touched, hugs and whatnot. The third one was, men are rarely asked, how are you doing? Or are you okay? Like, those are some real responses to maybe a joke of a question. But I remember watching that, and of course being like, real, but also maybe not everybody's experience. But there's something to that. There's something to this fact that men are rarely being asked by the people around them how they're doing. So what makes you think they're asking themselves? I know they're not, truly. I've talked to enough men to know that they're desperately looking for it and don't know how to get it. Some of my greatest friendships in my life have simply started because I was willing to ask them how they were really doing. That's how wild something like that is. That's how wild that question is. Or at least, I guess it feels wild to me, because it's such a simple question. Anybody can ask it. Anybody can truly show that they care. But we just don't. So I can sit back, look at one of my friends, or just a stranger really, and just be like, how are you doing really? Like, what's really going on? You have a little bit of a sad look on your face. Is everything okay? And they may share, they may not, but they'll at least see that I want to know. I want to know how they're doing. Sometimes when you ask a person this question, or these questions, they may not really answer because they've never been asked and they have no clue how to actually answer. That saddens me beyond belief. And I've seen it so many times. And sometimes it just takes me asking a couple times for them to get a little bit more comfortable, to find their words a little bit faster. And then they share. They share because they know I really want to know. Maybe I can help. That's how I know people don't really ask themselves. I've been asking myself for a while, so if someone asks me how I'm doing, I usually have a pretty solid idea. I have a good answer about what's going on. I have an answer to the, hey, how's it going? The one where people may not fully care about the answer. And then I have an answer for like, hey, how are things really? I'm really grateful for that. Serious. Like, being able to know and address my feelings is such a gift. And I had to earn that gift. I had to earn it. It didn't come easy because, like I mentioned before, oftentimes men feel alone. Nobody's sitting here asking me these questions. I had to learn by myself how to do this. I had to find mentors online and through my community, but mostly it started online. I had to find people who are already asking these questions so I can get an idea of, all right, what do I ask? What do I even say? Where do I do it? Do I do it in a mirror? Do I do it in a journal? I was so clueless at one point that I didn't even know what was going on for myself. I didn't know what was wrong. When I first started therapy years ago, I went in thinking, oh, I'm just a little bit stressed. Yeah, that's what it was. Had nothing to do with anything deeper. I just need some coping tactics, coping mechanisms. And after I figured that out, oh, I'm golden. I'm going to be just fine. And it took like the intake form for them to already know, all right, this dude's depressed and like heavy depressed. And then I found out a couple weeks later, yeah, oh crap. There was so much more hidden underneath this male bravado that I didn't even know was hurting me. And then months, if not years of therapy of going every single week and journaling sometimes 2 to 3 times a day and reading books and listening to podcasts and videos, I finally learned what I had to do for myself. At the top of this video, and I'm saying doing 100%, or should I say doing your best with the resources you had. Back then, I was doing the best with the resources I had. And I was able to ask myself this question. If I want to do better, what do I need? Well, I need better resources. I need more resources. And you have no idea how many resources are actually free out there. Not everybody can afford therapy. I 100% get that. Not everybody can afford a life coach. I 100% get that. But I guarantee there's many places in the world where you can access books, access podcasts. There's so many books out there on the topic of personal development. Heck, I have like 50 of them on my shelf alone because I was one of the people that, well, one, I was able to buy books and I like building my own library. So I bought every single book I wanted to read. But you don't have to do that. You could go to a library or podcasts. Oh my gosh, I've listened to probably thousands of hours of podcasts at this point, talking about self-help, personal development, growth. I used to listen to channels like On Purpose by Jay Shetty or the Ed Milet Show. I remember those were the first 2 podcasts that I found. And they're not the only ones. I've also found over time other incredible podcasts, like The Diary of a CEO has some incredible episodes, right? Like the Tony Robbins podcast has some incredible episodes. And over time, you'll find your way. You'll find what you like. Maybe you want to go to events. You want to do seminars. I have recommendations for those too. I've done a lot of this work so that you don't have to. And I'm not saying you don't have to, but I'm saying everything I talk about is everything that I've experienced all into my own perspective, my own experience. What you choose to do with what I've learned is up to you. Maybe I am just the spark. Like I'm just the flame that gets you started on your own path. I've only mentioned a couple resources here, right? I didn't even go into the many books that I've loved and have changed my life. But maybe, just maybe, you are meant to go and start one new thing. You're meant to learn to ask yourself that question. Because I could sit here in these videos and ask, hey, how are you doing really? But let's be real, there's a screen between us and you have to choose to answer that, say in the comments or through an email, right? A lot of people don't do it. And I get that. It could be uncomfortable. You don't truly know who I am yet. So if you're not going to answer it when I say it, the best that I can wish for you and hope for you and recommend for you is that you learn to ask yourself and answer that for yourself. There's one thing I've learned about talking about problems, I guess, or things going on or how I'm really doing is that the more I talk about it, the easier it becomes. I've talked about some crazy topics with random people in my life simply because I've talked so much about them that I'm no longer afraid or ashamed or guilty about having those feelings or having those experiences. I just say it very matter-of-factly and say, yeah, that's a part of my life. I've done that before, or I am still doing that. It's embarrassing as heck. But just because it's embarrassing doesn't mean it's not worth sharing. Because the more I've shared about myself, about these embarrassing things, the more I found people are willing to share about themselves. They say, oh, you know what? This guy shared this crazy stuff. Maybe, just maybe, my stuff isn't that embarrassing or it isn't that crazy. Maybe he'll get it and I will share. One of my favorite things to hear, truly, is when having a deeper conversation and someone goes, oh my gosh, please don't tell anybody else this. You're like the only person that knows. And maybe there's a part of like this like little kid in me that's like, haha, I know a secret, like kind of thing. But it's more so a pride that someone trusts me. There's something so powerful to me about trust and vulnerability and authenticity, because that's how deep connections are formed, made, and kept. Just because you share a secret with me doesn't mean we have to stay friends forever. But when you do, you'll also know that I'll never share it. I'll never share it without your permission. That's not what I'm here to do. I'm not here to dig up dirt on people. I'm here to help you dig just a little bit into your past. Learn just a little bit. Get you the resources that you need to dig further. I may be able to give you a little shovel, but maybe you want an excavating drill, right? That'll really get you deep. I don't have one of those for you. In truth, that's something I usually recommend someone go to therapy for, because they know how to properly train you on the equipment, on how to dig. Yeah, I may look at a machine and have some ideas, but I didn't do the training. Instead, I'm the person you go to for the starter tools, but also the person that helps you build later. Digging is its own job, right? But once you have that foundation, once you know what's underneath, I'm very good at helping you build what's next, helping you build that sturdier foundation, one where you get a little bit more layers, right? And slowly but surely, you'll build this dream house of a life, this house within your mind. Maybe it's a castle for you. Maybe it's a lighthouse. Maybe it's a modern day barn or something, like converted into a house, like warehouse. Whatever your inside home, your like inner home is to you, I'll help you build that. That's the best way that I could describe what I've done. I used to have a really shaky idea of what I wanted my house to be. Literally any storm or any earthquake, any hurricane came by and it would topple over. And that's what happened. It did topple over when things got really rough. And I realized I can't just rebuild this house again. I can't just do what I did last time. I need to start from scratch. So I dug deep, set a very strong, very good foundation. So now I'm weathering storms that I could only ever imagine I would experience. And some people get scared that there's a storm coming. But what I get to see is, all right, how does my house hold up? And when it holds up, how much stronger can the storm be? Because the stronger the storm, the greater the rainbow on the other side, the greater the life is that you'll have. I hope and pray to God that I become one of your resources. I become one of the people that you can look at, you can go to and say, you know what, I need just a dose of something, just a little help. What does Philip have for me today? I want to do that for you, not to be your only resource, but to be one of them. So that's it for today. I've given you a lot and I've drawn for quite a while, and I really hope that you could relate to what I've shared with you today. It really is important to me that you're doing the best you can with what you have. And before you head out, just remember to like the video, subscribe, hit that notification button so you never miss a video. And until next time, just remember to always fill up with the love. And I look forward to seeing you in the next one. I love you.